In late September, East Palo Alto's COVID positivity rate was 15.4%, 3 times the San Mateo County rate. And while this is extremely concerning, East Palo Alto City Council candidate Antonio Lopez assures that there are many factors that are not in the general public's forefront of thought when it goes into what makes up that rate.
We've had the perfect storm for COVID. I think when you understand that you have a community that, first of all, are by and large the essential workers of the peninsula, right? That is not a hyperbole for me to say that many people who work here, right, they dedicated to food catering and construction and going to Stanford. And so folks are literally putting themselves and their families at risk as they're trying to make sure they get their job, because we also have unemployment 11%, right? So you have a community that is struggling to work and go outside while there is a global pandemic, which is telling on folks to not go outside. Compound that with the fires that happened a couple weeks ago, where folks were literally almost cooking in their homes because we have a situation where people don't have AC. We talk about a digital divide. We also have an AC and AC and air purifier divide.
And on top of concerns of COVID, many residents are fearful that they will lose their homes as rent prices skyrocket. East Palo Altans have had a slight reprise in a moratorium which blocks any evictions for unpaid rent until February 1st of 2021. But with shelter-in-place orders in effect longer than anticipated, the ability for residents to earn enough money to pay the owed rent is slowly lowering.
Folks are fearful. Folks are worried if they're going to be able to make it next month. That is very common in East Palo Alto, where folks up and leave all of a sudden. They don't announce it. And of course, for our tenants, what makes that so difficult is the fact that because of the Costa-Hawks Act, all those homes that were at market rate, were at rent control, let's say it was $2,400 when they first moved in, are now back at market rate. So now the next folks that are trying to move in, it makes one more unit harder to actually afford to live here. So COVID has certainly been a devastating pandemic, but it is so because of the structural weaknesses that we've had as a community for, quite frankly, decades.
In order for residents, many of whom who've lost their jobs due to COVID, to pay rent, the positivity rate needs to lower to meet the requirements set by Governor Newsom's Blueprint for a Safer Economy. One of the first steps in that is increased testing. Lisa Gaucher, one of East Palo Alto City Council members, talks about the importance of accessibility in testing.
I think Project Baseline is providing a lot of the different areas. Case in point, the other night I was out and there was testing that was being done between 7 and 10 p.m. at night. So to really be able to address those essential workers that are probably working during the day and couldn't really be there to do the testing during the day. In addition, they're moving the testing around to meet the community's needs. So it's not just in one location, moving it to the west side where it's needed so that people who don't have vehicles and can walk to go get that testing, it's done. But I think it's really important and critical to move it around for different times to try to meet the entire community's needs.
But despite testing, it is all for nothing if social distancing is not followed. Palo Alto High School senior Eli SALINAS talks about his observations of social distancing in his neighborhood of East Palo Alto.
But even then, just like on the streets, I sometimes just see people walking around without a mask when they're with the group, like whether it just be them biking around or something. I see a lot of people without masks. And then, like I was touching on the subject before, like with the stores over here, everyone's wearing a mask, but like it seems like the stores sometimes get a little overpopulated with how many people are actually in the store.
East Palo Alto is geographically isolated between the Bay and Highway 101, but this does not mean it's isolated from San Mateo County support. But in a community that has a high proportion of technologically challenged residents, Lopez criticizes the lack of accessibility in county aid programs.
I think San Mateo County has stepped up in recent months or years in terms of its relationship with East Palo Alto, and I'm happy to see that. I do, however, maintain the fact that you can have 100 programs, guys, but if the community does not know how to access them, then they're pretty null, in my opinion. Many things are online, but we're still a culture of word of mouth, and we need to think of creative ways to safely hand out physically or in person or in the areas that literature.
Gaucher shares how the city has attempted to remedy this issue.
When we started doing the COVID testing, we used social media, but we also used flyers in different languages as well. So those flyers were taken to the retail center, they were taken to some of the apartments. I work at the Boys and Girls Club where we provide hot meals. Those flyers were provided to the residents there as well. And I'm sure others have been sharing the information. We are all aware that everybody doesn't work on social media. And I believe there are flyers that are put up about the census and different things of just taking care of themselves and reminding people the importance of how to combat COVID.
And with an emphasis being put on doing activities in person, voting registration is just one of many things that is recommended to be completed online. One issue that LOPEZ brings up is the errors that occurred in August and September with the registration process in languages other than English.
If you go to californiaregistration.gov, and then if you click Spanish, it'll give error, Chinese error, Thai error. And my thing is, in a place like California, in a place like the Silicon Valley, I can get an Apple intern to probably fix that on his coffee break. You see what I'm saying? So there's no excuse to have people not monitoring this, because I don't care if it was for half a day. I don't care if it was for an hour. That is dangerous to our democracy, and that is undermining our ability to help enfranchise our community. And so, I think this is what the structural inequities we talk about in place, whether from the local to the state, that we as people of color or people who are concerned have to be vigilant to really call out, because everything's on the line, especially now with this election, with everything that's been going on. I mean, we just can't afford to have these technological slip-ups.
And while COVID may seem to be affecting mostly adults, it also greatly impacts our youth.
In general, it's affected me where I have not really left my house so much. I've technically not really left my house unless I kind of have to. And it's only been a couple times where I'll go play like sports, or if I hang out with like one or two friends or family, then I'll do that. But other than that, it's been just school at home and just chilling out at home. It kind of just limits me on what I can really do in my life right now.
SALINAS reflects on how fortunate he is to go to school in Palo Alto, but for students in the Ravenswood School District, programs that would normally be a given are at risk of not being offered.
I met a young woman. Her name is a Salvadoran woman. Her name is Irene, and she said her son Jairo is partially deaf, and the school told her that he will not be able to go back to school until August of next year, right? Because the virtual learning is not accommodating him. You see what I'm saying? And so I'm trying to work with her to figure out how we can connect it to resources. But my thing is, the leadership should be in touch with these issues, with the people's changing, evolving concerns.
And there are not many solutions that are possible with online learning. In a conversation with LOPEZ, COVID was the nail in the coffin for the Ravenswood School District after both Willow Oaks and Brentwood shut down earlier this year due to declining enrollment and budget cuts. Gaucher states that the city was able to minimize losses from COVID due to a strong financial team.
Our financial team, they've been really conservative with their finances, so we've been able to put aside some funds, and so we're not struggling as much right now. But we will have to look at our funds, and we'll have to figure out what taxes and revenue is going to look like later, and to be able to assess what the COVID impact will have. Also, to see what the federal government is going to do. Many cities are waiting for the funding that the federal government has promised to them, not the county. And it depends on how those resources are going to be shared as well.
Gaucher accentuates that as a community and a country, we must work together to fight COVID.
When you think of COVID, it's not just EPA. In order to open up our economy, we need residents and everybody to follow the lead and wear your mask and keep your social distance. When we talk about small businesses and things of that nature, in order to really impact our community and to bring this economy back, we need to put people back to work. And we can't do that if we can't stop the spread of the virus. We know that the rates are high in East Palo Alto. We continue to remind people to wear their mask and keep their social distance. And if you're not feeling well, please stay at home. So that is the message I would tell anybody. Let's knock this out so that we can get back to normal and put our family members and residents back to work.
For In Focus, I'm Cody Millar.